On September 3, 2004, 4 graduate students from the University of Michigan set out on a week-long canoe trip through the Voyageurs National Park in Minnesota. Daniel Reeves, Kyle Anderson, Tyler Connor, and Jason Hart, all between the ages of 21 and 23, all experienced hikers, chose the remote 80-acre Elliott Island as their camping spot. They were due back on Saturday, September 7th. They did not return. When rangers arrived on the island to check on them, they found the camp untouched. 2 tents, 4 sleeping bags, all their gear in place, food hanging from a tree. The canoe was on the shore, but the students themselves were nowhere to be found. Search dogs picked up a scent leading to the rocky northern shore of the island and stopped there at the water's edge, refusing to continue. 9 months later, the body of one of the students, Kyle Anderson, was found on the shore of a lake 11 miles from the island. Cause of death, drowning. The body was naked. The other 3, Daniel, Tyler, and Jason, have not been found to this day. For 21 years, their families have been searching for answers. For 21 years, the case has remained open. This is the story of how 4 young people disappeared from a small island in the middle of a lake, from which it is impossible to leave without a boat. It is a story that still haunts their loved ones, investigators, and rangers at Voyageurs National Park. Hello, friends. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, support us with your comments and likes, and let's get started. On September 3, 2004, 4 University of Michigan graduates set off on a week-long adventure along the waterways of Voyageurs National Park in Minnesota. 21-year-old Daniel Reeves, 22-year-old Kyle Anderson, 22-year-old Tyler Connor, and 23-year-old Jason Hart had been close friends since their freshman year, united by their love of nature and passion for adventure. All 4 studied environmental science and planned to work in conservation after graduation. This trip was supposed to be a farewell journey before starting their careers and adult lives. Voyageurs National Park, located on the border between the United States and Canada, is known for its extensive waterways, a maze of lakes, islands, and channels, where the only way to get around is by boat or canoe. The park covers more than 218,000 acres, most of which is water. There are no roads leading into the park, no hotels or restaurants. Only wilderness, dense forests, and clear, cold lakes. It was this isolation and unspoiled beauty that attracted the friends. On Tuesday morning, the group registered at the ranger station at the park entrance. They received permission to camp on remote Elliott Island, located in the northern part of Lake Kabetogama, one of the park's 4 main lakes. Elliott Island is about 8 miles from the nearest mainland access point, making it an ideal location for those seeking true seclusion. The island is about 80 acres in size, large enough to explore, but small enough to walk around in a few hours. Ranger Margaret Stone, who registered the group, later recalled that the young people were well prepared and in high spirits. They had high-quality equipment: an aluminum canoe designed for 4 people, 2 waterproof backpacks, tents, sleeping bags, maps, a compass, a first aid kit, and 10 days' worth of food. Daniel, as the most experienced member of the group, he had made several long hikes in the wilderness of Michigan and Wisconsin, took on the role of unofficial leader of the expedition. The ranger instructed them on safety measures, how to properly store food from bears, what to do when encountering wild animals, how to navigate with maps, and where to call in case of an emergency. The group was scheduled to return on Saturday, September 7th by noon. The weather in early September in northern Minnesota is usually stable, with temperatures around 60 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and around 40 degrees at night. The forecast promised clear days with no precipitation. The friends loaded the canoe and set off around 10 a.m. The trip to Elliott Island took about 3 hours of paddling on open water. This wasn't the group's first canoe trip, Last summer they spent a week canoeing in Chippewa National Forest, so they felt confident on the water. According to other tourists who saw the group on Wednesday, the friends set up camp on the south shore of Elliott Island, in a sheltered cove with a sandy beach. 2 tents were set up on a flat clearing about 50 feet from the shore, surrounded by pine and birch trees. The canoe was pulled ashore. A campfire was set up between the tents. Everything looked right, professional. It was clear that the young people knew what they were doing. Wednesday and Thursday passed quietly. A couple of fishermen passing by the island on Thursday afternoon saw smoke from the campfire and heard voices and laughter. Everything seemed normal. Daniel kept a notebook, a travel diary where he documented routes, observations of nature, and impressions. The last entry, written in his handwriting, is dated Thursday, September 5th in the evening. Second day on the island. The weather is great. Caught a few perch. Tyler tried to build a fire without matches. It only worked on the 3rd try. In the evening we heard strange cries coming from the forest on the northern part of the island. They didn't sound like coyotes or wolves. Something else, more drawn out. Kyle joked that it was Bigfoot. Jason said it was probably a lynx. They make eerie sounds. Tomorrow we plan to walk around the entire island and explore the North Shore. That was the last entry. By Saturday evening, when the group had not shown up at the appointed time, Ranger Stone began to worry. According to park rules, if registered tourists do not return within 6 hours of their scheduled time, a search should be initiated. By 6 p.m., Stone had contacted the park's search and rescue captain. By 7 p.m., 2 rangers in a motorboat were heading for Elliott Island. The trip took about an hour. The sun was setting when they approached the southern shore of the island. It was immediately clear that something was wrong. The canoe was pulled ashore. If the group had left, they would have taken the boat with them. The rangers moored and climbed up to the camp. What they saw caused instant alarm. 2 tents stood untouched, zippers closed. Inside the first tent were 2 sleeping bags, neatly unzipped. Personal belongings laid out along the walls. Clothes, books, flashlights. The second tent was the same. 4 sleeping bags, backpacks, everything in its place. Between the tents was a fire pit with cold ashes. The rangers checked. The fire had not been lit for at least a day, possibly 2. The ashes were cold, damp from the night dew. About 20 feet from the camp, on a tree branch 12 feet high, hung a waterproof bag with food, standard practice in regions with bears. The bag was intact, untouched. The rangers lowered it and checked the contents. Canned food, dry goods, energy bars, everything was there. Nothing had been eaten or damaged by animals. The rangers began searching the area around the camp, calling out the students' names loudly. They walked along the shore in both directions and checked the forest behind the camp. Darkness was falling, which made the search more difficult. They returned to the boat, took powerful flashlights, and continued searching the island until midnight. There was no sign of the 4 young people. On the morning of Sunday, September 8th, a full-scale search and rescue operation began. By 9 o'clock, 20 rangers and volunteers were working on the island. Elliott Island was systematically divided into sectors, each of which was thoroughly combed. 80 acres is not that much, but the dense forest, rocky terrain, and thickets of shrubs made the search difficult. By noon, a Coast Guard helicopter was involved, flying not only over Elliott Island, but also the surrounding islands and coastline within a 10-mile radius. Teams on motorboats checked the nearby islands. Perhaps the friends had decided to explore other places, even though their canoe remained on Elliott. Divers began searching the coastal waters around the island. If someone had fallen into the water and drowned, the body should be somewhere nearby. Daniel's notebook was found at the camp. The investigation team studied all the entries, especially the last one about the strange cries. The park's biologists were consulted. The senior biologist explained that Voyageurs Park is home to bobcats, coyotes, and occasionally wolves. All of these animals make various sounds, especially during mating season or when defending their territory. Bobcat cries can indeed sound eerie and unfamiliar to people who are not familiar with the sound. There was nothing unusual or threatening about it. On Monday, 3 search dogs were brought in with handlers from St. Louis County. The dogs were given the students' clothing from the tents to sniff. All 3 dogs, 2 German shepherds and a bloodhound, picked up the scent and began moving in the same direction. They led the handlers through the forest to the northern tip of the island, the very direction the students had planned to explore according to Daniel's last entry. The northern shore of Elliott Island is a rocky ridge. Granite boulders rise straight out of the water, forming difficult terrain. The water here is deep and cold, and the current is stronger due to the narrow strait between the island and the neighboring mainland. The dogs led the guides to this very rocky ridge. At the water's edge, all 3 dogs began to behave strangely. They circled in place, sniffed the rocks and water, whined. Then all 3 lay down and refused to continue working. Canine expert Robert Erickson, who had been working with search dogs for 16 years, was puzzled. They definitely picked up a scent. Judging by their behavior, the students were here, on these rocks. The trail leads to the water and ends there. This could mean that they entered the water, swam, waded, or sailed away in a boat. But their canoe remains on the south shore. It doesn't make sense. Divers concentrated their search on the north shore. They searched the bottom within a 500-foot radius of where the dogs had stopped. The depth here reached 50 feet in some places. The bottom was rocky, with large boulders between which a body could get stuck. 3 days of intensive underwater searches yielded no results. No bodies, no clothes, no equipment. The St. Louis County Sheriff's Office investigation team took control of the case. All of the students' personal belongings were seized and sent for examination. Notebooks, clothing, sleeping bags, everything was checked for signs of a struggle, blood, or any unusual substances. Nothing was found. The campsite looked completely peaceful, as if the students had simply gone for a walk and disappeared. The students' families arrived in Minnesota on Monday. Daniel's parents are Robert and Catherine Reeves of Detroit. Kyle's parents are Thomas and Jennifer Anderson of Ann Arbor. Tyler's parents are Mark and Susan Connor of Grand Rapids, and Jason's parents are David and Mary Hart of Lansing. Everyone was in shock, unable to believe what was happening. Robert Reeves, a retired engineer, joined the search himself, refusing to sit idly by. "My son is responsible and cautious. He would not risk the lives of his friends. Something happened. Something they couldn't control," he repeated over and over again. The search operation lasted 2 weeks. More than 300 people participated on various days. Rangers, police, volunteers, students, and faculty from the University of Michigan, who organized their own search teams. Every island within a 20-mile radius of Elliott was thoroughly searched. 50 miles of mainland coastline were combed. Helicopters flew over the area daily. Divers checked the bottom not only around Elliott Island, but also in nearby straits and bays. The investigation team considered various versions of what had happened. The most likely version seemed to be an accident. The 4 friends may have decided to explore the northern part of the island on foot, walk to the rocky shore, and someone may have slipped and fallen into the water. The others tried to help and also ended up in the cold water. In September, the water in Minnesota's lakes is about 55 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to cause hypothermia in 30 to 40 minutes. Even good swimmers can lose muscle control and drown, but this version did not explain why no bodies were found. Usually, drowned people float up after a few days due to decomposition gases. Divers searched the bottom of the lake in the exact spot indicated by the dogs. The currents in Lake Cabetagama are relatively weak. The bodies could not have drifted far in a few days. The criminal theory was investigated. Who could have attacked 4 young men on a remote island? 23 groups of tourists were registered in the park during those days. All were interviewed and their routes checked. No one was near Elliott Island at the critical time. Rangers checked lists of private boat owners who could have been in the park without registering. Several people were interviewed. All had alibis. By the end of the second week, the official search operation was called off. The case was reclassified as an active investigation. The students' families organized private search parties, hired divers, and checked remote islands every weekend for the next few months. A $50,000 reward was offered for information on the students' whereabouts. Winter came, covering the lakes with ice. The search became impossible until spring. The families lived in agonizing uncertainty. The University of Michigan held a memorial service in November, although the students were not formally declared dead. Thousands of students, faculty, and friends came to honor the memory of the four, but the parents refused to give up hope. "Until the bodies are found, they may be alive," said Catherine Reeves. The spring of 2005 brought a resumption of the search. As soon as the ice melted from the lakes at the end of April, the families organized a new expedition. A professional search and rescue company was hired to conduct a systematic survey of the bottom using modern sonar equipment. Over 2 weeks, more than 100 square miles of water surface were surveyed. Several objects resembling bodies were detected by the sonar. Each time, divers descended to check. Each time, they turned out to be sunken logs, rocks, or old nets. In June 2005, 9 months after his disappearance, a group of fishermen from Duluth discovered a body on the shore of Lake Kabatoga, about 11 miles east of Elliott Island. The body was in a state of significant decomposition, partially hidden in the coastal vegetation. The fishermen immediately called the authorities. Forensic examination and DNA analysis took several days. The results confirmed that it was the body of Kyle Anderson. The St. Louis County medical examiner determined the cause of death to be drowning. The lungs contained water matching the chemical composition of Lake Kabetogama. However, the body was in a condition that made detailed analysis difficult. 9 months in cold water, exposure to fish, and other aquatic organisms left little soft tissue. What particularly puzzled investigators was that the body was not wearing any clothes. Kyle was completely naked. There were no traces of clothing near the site where he was found. Aquatic environment experts explained that clothing can be removed from the body by currents, especially after prolonged exposure to water, when decomposition weakens the fabric. However, some items of clothing usually remain: belts, shoes, underwear. The site of the discovery was 11 miles from Elliott Island. Currents in the lake could have moved the body that distance in 9 months, especially given seasonal changes, autumn storms, spring ice melt, and water level changes. But bodies do not usually float that far, especially in closed lakes without strong currents. The discovery of Kyle's body gave hope that the other 3 would also be found. The search was concentrated in the area where the body was found. Divers searched the bottom within a 5-mile radius. Teams on boats combed the shoreline. Helicopters flew over the area. 2 weeks of intensive searching yielded no results. Daniel Reeves, Tyler Connor, and Jason Hart were not found. Kyle was buried in Ann Arbor. Hundreds of people came to say goodbye. His parents thanked everyone who helped in the search, but could not hide their grief. "We found our son. But where are the other 3 boys? Where are Daniel, Tyler, Jason? Their families deserve the same," Thomas Anderson said at the memorial service. Years passed. The search continued every summer, but with less and less intensity. The Reeves, Connor, and Hart families did not give up hope. They organized annual search expeditions, checked remote islands, and hired divers. Every spring flood, every autumn storm could reveal what was hidden. But the years passed without new discoveries. The case remains open. Daniel Reeves, Tyler Connor, and Jason Hart are listed as missing. Their photos remain in the database of the National Center for Missing Persons. Rangers at Voyageurs Park are instructed to pay attention to any findings: clothing, equipment, remains, The story of 4 students from the University of Michigan remains one of the most tragic and mysterious in the annals of Voyageurs National Park. 4 young people, full of enthusiasm and plans for the future, set off on a routine weekend hike and never returned. What happened on Elliott Island in those September days of 2004? Why did they leave camp without taking their canoe? What made them go to the North Shore? How did Kyle end up in the water 11 miles from the island? Where are the other 3? Experts suggest that the most likely scenario is an accident on the water. Perhaps the friends decided to swim off the rocky shore, underestimating the cold water and the strength of the current. One got into trouble, the others tried to help, and all 4 ended up in the cold water. Hypothermia sets in quickly in 50-degree water. Even strong young people can lose their ability to swim in 30 to 40 minutes. Kyle's body was carried away by the current and eventually washed ashore 9 months later. The other 3 may have been trapped underwater between boulders, where divers were unable to find them, or carried away to other parts of the lake. But this version does not explain some details. Why did the dogs follow the trail to the North Shore so confidently if the students had simply decided to go for a swim? Why didn't they take the canoe if they planned to explore another part of the island? Why were no clothes found on the shore if they had undressed before swimming? Voyageurs National Park remains a popular destination for tourists and canoeists. Thousands of people travel the same waterways and camp on the same islands every year. Most return with wonderful memories and photographs, but the story of the 4 students serves as a reminder. The wilderness is unpredictable, the water is unforgiving, and sometimes even experienced. Prepared people don't make it home. Robert Reeves, Daniel's father, continues to visit Voyageurs Park every summer. He is now 78 years old, but he still hopes to find answers. I can't stop. My son is out there somewhere. Tyler and Jason are out there somewhere. I have to keep looking as long as I can, he says. Every year he spends a week on a boat, checking remote shores, exploring small coves, hoping for a miracle. 21 years have passed since that September day. Daniel would be 42 now. Kyle, Tyler, and Jason would be 43, 43, and 44, respectively. They were supposed to become environmentalists, scientists, people who would change the world for the better. Instead, they became part of one of the most mysterious and tragic disappearances in the history of America's national parks. Questions remain unanswered. Families live with the pain of uncertainty, and the lakes of Voyageurs Park keep their secrets, silent and cold as they always have been.